The billionaire's dog attacked everyone who came near, until the new maid knelt beside it, the dog nobody touches. The gate was black iron, tall enough to make a grown man feel small. Maya Ose stood in front of it with a canvas bag over one shoulder and a folded piece of paper in her hand, the address written there in her aunt's handwriting. Careful and hopeful, she checked it twice. This was the place. The Hargrove estate sat at the end of Brackenwood Lane, in the kind of neighbourhood where the lawns were greener than anywhere else, and the silence cost money. The main house was French-inspired, all cream limestone and grand columns and balconies trimmed with iron lace. Tall arched windows caught the morning light and threw it back. Fountains, sculpted hedges, cobblestone wide enough for 3 cars side by side. Maya had cleaned houses before, but nothing like this. She pressed the intercom button. A woman's voice came back sharp and fast. "Service entrance is around the left side. Don't ring the front." That was her welcome. She found the side gate, smaller and plain, already buzzing open. A woman in a grey uniform waited just inside, mid-50s, short hair, the kind of face that had made a career out of disapproving of things. She looked Maya up and down the way you'd look at something you weren't sure you wanted to touch. "You're the new day staff," the woman said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am, Maya Ose. Mrs. Hargrove arranged—" "I know what was arranged." The woman turned and walked. "I'm Doris. I run the household. What Mrs. Hargrove arranges and what actually happens here are 2 different things. Keep up." Maya kept up. Her shoes were quiet on the stone. Doris's heels clicked like a clock that was always running fast. They moved through a back hallway that smelled of lemon oil and fresh laundry, past a commercial kitchen where 2 other staff members looked up briefly and then looked away. Nobody said hello. The tour was quick and cold. Doris pointed at rooms. She named tasks. She didn't explain twice. There were 7 bathrooms to clean, a formal dining room that required specific products used in a specific order, and 3 sitting rooms that were never sat in but still required weekly polishing. The east wing was off-limits and less called. The second floor was personal family space and absolutely off-limits. The north garden was maintained by a separate crew, and Maya was not to interfere. "Questions?" Doris said when they were done. "Just one," Maya said. "Which cleaning products are under the sink in every bathroom? Labeled, read them." Doris stepped close. Her voice dropped just enough to be private. "I don't know why Mrs. Hargrove hired outside the usual agency. I don't need to know. What I do know is that I've let go of 3 girls this month, and I'll let go of a 4th without blinking. We do not move things from where they belong. We do not speak to family members unless spoken to. And we do not go near the north courtyard." Maya waited. "Because of the dog?" Something shifted in Doris's expression. Not surprise exactly, more like she was annoyed that Maya already knew. "Because of the dog," she said flatly. "Titan. He is not a pet. He does not respond to commands from staff. He has put 2 groundskeepers in the hospital, and the gardening crew will not work in any space where he has access. He is Mr. Hargrove's animal, and he is not our concern. You see him, you walk the other direction. You do not attempt to approach him, you do not offer him food, and you do not make the mistake of thinking he is something other than what he is. And what is he?" Doris looked at her for a moment. "Dangerous." Maya started with the east wing bathrooms. The work was hard but familiar. She moved quietly, rinsed carefully, replaced everything exactly where she found it. She had a method, left to right, top to bottom, finish with the floor, and she kept to it. It was the same method her mother had taught her when Maya was 12, and they would clean the community center together on Saturday mornings, singing church songs low and off-key, laughing at each other's wrong notes. Her mother had died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Vast and brutal. Maya still hummed those songs without thinking. She was humming when Doris appeared in the bathroom doorway with a look on her face that said the humming was a problem. "This isn't a church," Doris said. Maya stopped humming. She finished the East Wing by 10. The kitchen girl, a young woman named Priscilla who had short braids and kept her eyes down around Doris, brought her a glass of water in the hallway and whispered, "You're fast. Most new girls take till noon." "I've done this a while," Maya said. "How long?" "Since I was old enough to hold a mop." Priscilla almost smiled. Then she heard Doris's heels in the next room and disappeared. It was just before 11 when Maya carried a mop bucket through the back hallway toward the laundry room and took a wrong turn. She realized it almost immediately. The hallway ahead was different, the light coming from a different angle, the smell of fresh air replacing the closed-off indoor smell. She drifted toward the north side of the house without meaning to. She stopped, turned back. That's when she heard it. Not a bark. A low sound, deep and quiet, like a question asked in a register, too low for most people to catch. She turned her head. Through a half-open door at the end of the side hall, she could see the edge of the north courtyard. Pale stone, a fountain, flowers along the perimeter. And in the middle of the courtyard, sitting completely still, was the largest dog she had ever seen in her life. Titan. He was a Rottweiler, she could see that, but scale didn't prepare you for the reality of him. Massive shoulders, a head like a block of dark stone. Black and tan coat so glossy it looked like something out of a painting. He was sitting straight, alert, ears forward, watching the half-open door, as if he had known she was there before she'd even stopped walking. He was watching her. Maya didn't move. She knew dogs. She had grown up with a small, ancient beagle named Cinnamon, who had been the gentlest creature alive. She had volunteered at an animal shelter in her 20s and learned to read the language of animals, the way tension lived in their shoulders, the way fear showed in the whites of their eyes, the way a dog that meant harm announced it in every line of his body. Titan was not announcing harm. He was curious, his head tilted, just slightly, just enough. And that single motion changed everything about how she saw him. He wasn't a weapon standing in a courtyard. He was an enormous, isolated animal sitting alone in a very large, very empty space, watching the first person who had stopped to look back at him in who knew how long. Maya crouched down, not toward him, not moving forward. She just lowered herself to his level there in the doorway, with the bucket handle in her hand, and looked at him. He looked back. For a long moment, nothing else happened. The fountain made its sound. A bird called somewhere in the hedges. The morning light moved slow and gold across the courtyard stone. Then Titan stood up. He crossed the courtyard toward her, smooth, heavy, purposeful, each step placing itself with complete confidence, and stopped 2 feet from the doorway. He was close enough that she could see the leather collar around his neck, thick and dark, with a brass plate. Close enough to hear him breathe. He lowered his head and sniffed the air between them. She held still. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm Maya." He stepped through the doorway. He was enormous beside her. His back reached her shoulder, even though she was crouching, even though he had his head low. He sniffed her hand, her knee, the side of the mop bucket. His tail, that thick, abbreviated tail, moved once, twice. Then, with the careful deliberateness of a creature who had thought it through, he lowered himself down beside her and put his head against her knee. Maya sat with him. She didn't think about the rules. She didn't think about Doris. She pressed her hand gently to the top of his broad head and felt the warmth there, the weight of him, the way his breathing slowed and deepened the moment her hand made contact. She didn't know how long they sat like that. She didn't know that Doris had come looking for her, didn't know that Doris had found the door and was now standing 6 feet behind her, frozen, staring at the 130-pound dog sleeping peacefully against the new maid's knee. She didn't know that Priscilla had come around the corner a moment later and put her hand over her mouth. She didn't know that the two of them stood there watching something that, as far as anyone in that house could remember, had never happened before. What she knew was that the dog was tired and lonely, and that his breathing had gone completely calm. She knew that wherever he had been in his life, whatever had made him what Doris called dangerous, he had known, the way animals always know, whether someone was safe. She scratched behind his ear. He sighed. The dog who had put two men in the hospital had just fallen asleep in the arms of the woman no one had bothered to welcome, and the household that thought it knew everything about both of them had just learned something new about neither. Everyone sees it, but no one believes it. Doris sent her to strip and remake 5 guest beds as punishment for losing track of time. She didn't say it was punishment. She said there was a backlog, which Maya understood was the same thing. She spent the next 2 hours pulling off heavy linen, rotating mattresses, tucking corners with military precision. Alone. Doris checked her work once, found a single pillow out of alignment, and moved it 1 inch to the left without saying a word. By lunch, Maya had cleaned 9 rooms, mopped 2 hallways, and repolished the brass fixtures in the main foyer after someone, Doris, she suspected, decided they weren't bright enough. She ate her lunch outside on the service steps, a cheese sandwich from home. Priscilla slipped out 10 minutes later with a cup of tea and sat beside her. "You really touched him," Priscilla said. "He's a dog," Maya said. "He's not just a dog." Priscilla wrapped both hands around her cup. In April, a grounds guy named Reuben went near the north garden to check the sprinkler heads. Titan came through the hedge. Reuben needed 7 stitches on his forearm and missed 3 weeks of work. In January, a delivery driver came through the wrong gate by accident, and Titan had him pinned to the ground before anyone could do anything. She paused. Mr. Hargrove had to come out himself to call him off. "Is Mr. Hargrove here now?" Priscilla looked at her sideways. "He travels. He goes for months sometimes. Mrs. Hargrove runs things while he's away. And Titan? He stays. There are handlers who bring food and water, but they go over the fence with a pole to slide the bowls through." She shook her head. "Nobody's touched that dog in years. I don't think he's ever let anyone. And then you just—" She gestured at Maya, apparently unable to finish the sentence. "He came to me," Maya said simply. "I know. I saw." They sat for a moment. The afternoon sun was warm on the service steps. Somewhere in the formal garden, a sprinkler came on and made a sound like rain. "Doris is going to make your life miserable," Priscilla said quietly. "She already is. I mean more than this. What happened with Titan? She's spooked. She doesn't like things she can't explain. And she's going to find a reason to let you go before Mrs. Hargrove has a chance to decide she likes you." Maya took a slow sip of tea. "Then I'll do my job well enough that there's no reason to give her." Priscilla looked at her for a moment with something that might have been admiration or might have been pity, possibly both. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." By 3 o'clock, Mrs. Hargrove had come downstairs. Maya knew who she was because the whole house changed register when she appeared. The energy in the rooms pulled tighter, the staff moved slightly faster, and Priscilla, who had been chatting quietly to herself in the kitchen, went still and professional. Mrs. Hargrove was around 45, elegant in the way that required daily maintenance and significant money. She wore a black silk robe and diamond earrings, and her dark hair was blown out in careful waves. She walked through the rooms as if performing an inspection and found things to comment on. A smear on the foyer window. Who polished this last? The wrong vase on the console table in the sitting room. How many times have I said the crystal one stays? She found Maya in the second sitting room, reorganizing the cleaning caddy after Doris had rearranged it into an order that made no practical sense. Mrs. Hargrove stopped in the doorway. "You're new," she said. Yes, ma'am. Maya Osei. I started this morning. The woman looked at her the way she had looked at the smear on the window, cataloguing, assessing, finding it wanting. The agency sent you? Actually, you called my aunt directly, Nadine Osei. She cleaned for the Mercer family for 12 years and... I know who Nadine is. Mrs. Hargrove moved into the room, ran one finger along the windowsill and examined it for dust. Found none. Didn't acknowledge finding none. You're younger than I expected. I'm 27. That's not what I mean. She turned to face Maya fully. I mean, you look like someone who doesn't know how to be invisible yet. That's the thing about this work. The best people disappear. You walk into a room, you do your task. You walk out and no one ever thinks about whether you were there. Maya kept her expression even. I understand. Do you? Mrs. Hargrove tilted her head. Because I'm told you spent 20 minutes this morning sitting on the floor of the north hallway doorway with the dog. So news traveled fast. He approached me, Maya said. He seemed calm. I didn't want to startle him by moving abruptly. Something moved through Mrs. Hargrove's expression, something quick and complicated. Titan does not approach staff. Titan does not approach anyone except my husband, and even then only on his terms. What you're describing doesn't happen. It happened this morning. The room went very quiet. If I hear of you going near that animal again, Mrs. Hargrove said, her voice cooling by several degrees, I will end your employment here that day. Is that understood? Maya held her eyes. Yes, ma'am. She hadn't meant to go near the north courtyard again. She was carrying a load of clean folded linens to the linen closet at the end of the west corridor, a route she had been shown, a route she had taken twice already without incident, when she heard the sound. Not a growl, not barking, a whimper, low and short, quickly suppressed from the other side of the wall. The sound of an animal in pain trying not to make noise about it. Maya stopped. She stood at the closed door at the end of the corridor. Not the same door as before, a different one, but she could tell from the air under it, cool and outdoor smelling, that it opened to the north side of the house. She heard it again, that low, held-in sound. She set the linens on the floor, tried the door handle. It opened. Titan was in the corner of the courtyard near the drainage grate, his back leg extended awkwardly. Even from 20 feet away, she could see he was holding his paw off the ground. As she stepped through the door, he lifted his head and looked at her, and the low noise stopped entirely. Hey, she said quietly. What happened? She crossed the courtyard. He watched her come. He didn't move away. When she crouched beside him, she could see what had happened. A long thorn, thick and dark, had gone clean into the pad of his right front paw. Not the back leg. Front, which he'd been shielding, and she'd misjudged the angle from the door. Oh, that's bad, she murmured. You poor thing. She looked at it carefully. The thorn needed to come out, but it hadn't broken off, and it wasn't deep enough to have caused real damage. She could tell because he was weight-bearing on the leg, just guarding the paw. She would need to be quick and confident, and he would need to trust her completely. She put her hand on his shoulder first, steady, calm. He leaned into her hand like he recognized her by touch. She talked to him while she worked, quietly, steadily. Nonsense, really, just sound and tone, the way she used to talk to Cinnamon through the hard parts of the old dog's arthritis. She got a grip on the thorn and pulled it clean in one smooth motion. Titan flinched, let out a single short sound, and then turned and licked her wrist. You're okay, she told him. You're okay. She didn't hear the footsteps until they stopped. Behind her, across the courtyard, standing at the main entrance archway with his hands loose at his sides, was a man she didn't recognize. Not one of the regular staff. She knew all of their faces now. This man was older, mid-60s, with short grey hair gone entirely silver and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a plain dark jacket and unremarkable trousers, nothing expensive looking, work-worn boots. He held a canvas bag in one hand. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not anger, not surprise exactly. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Which made no sense, because she had never seen him before in her life. "Don't stop," he said quietly. His voice was low and warm, the kind that didn't need volume. "He trusts you. He had a thorn in his paw," Maya said. "I see that." The man set his bag down on the courtyard stone and stayed where he was, giving her distance. "Is it out?" "Yes." Titan had turned to look at the man. His tail moved, slower than it had moved with Maya, more cautious, but it moved. He didn't approach. He stayed close to Maya's knee. "He doesn't usually let anyone touch that paw," the man said. "He let me." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, watching the dog settle. "I can see that." Maya looked back at Titan, then at the man. "Are you from a maintenance company?" A pause. "Something like that. You should tell whoever manages the garden that there's a thorn bush somewhere with very long thorns. This one was 1.5 inches at least. I'll make sure they know." She stood, brushing off her knees. Titan stood with her, pressing his flank against her leg. She put a hand on his head one more time, and he closed his eyes. The man in the plain jacket watched this with an expression she still couldn't name. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya," she said. "I'm the day staff." "I know," he said. She looked at him. He picked up his canvas bag. "I'm Corey," he said. "I'm just here to check on a few things." He smiled at her, brief, quiet, genuine, and disappeared back through the archway. It was Priscilla who found her afterward, back in the west corridor collecting the abandoned linens from the floor, Titan's dark hairs still on the knee of her uniform. "You went back in, didn't you?" Priscilla said. Not a question. "He was hurt." "Maya, he had a thorn in his paw the size of my thumbnail, Priscilla. I wasn't going to leave him there." Priscilla looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a lint roller and held it out without a word. Maya took it. She rolled the dog hair from her uniform and straightened her apron and picked up the linens and went back to work. She thought about the man named Corey, the way he'd said "I know" when she told him she was day staff, the way he'd stood back and given her space and watched Titan trust her like it was something he'd been waiting a long time to see. She thought about the way Doris had called the dog dangerous. She thought about the way Titan had licked her wrist. She thought about the difference between the two. At the end of the day, when she was putting on her coat in the service corridor and gathering her bag, she passed Doris coming the other direction. Doris stopped, looked at her. "Mrs. Hargrove will be reviewing new hires at the end of the week," she said. "Standard procedure." Maya nodded. "I would not assume that going well." Doris walked past her. Maya stood for a moment in the corridor with her canvas bag and her coat and her quiet, careful method and her mother's songs still somewhere in her chest. Then she walked out into the evening. Above the iron gate, the sky had gone deep blue and the first stars were just beginning. Somewhere behind the limestone walls, Titan was probably asleep in the north courtyard, weight on his good paw, dreaming dog dreams. She thought, whatever happens, at least someone in that house trusts you. She thought, that's worth something. She walked to her car. She didn't know that from the second-floor window of the east wing. A pair of dark eyes had watched her cross the cobblestone driveway all the way to the gate. She didn't know that the man named Corey was not a maintenance contractor. She didn't know that he had never called himself Corey in his life. She had been told to be invisible, and somehow in one single day she was the only person everyone in that house couldn't stop watching. The man who watches from the shadows. The second morning, Maya arrived 7 minutes early. She didn't know why exactly. Something about the house pulled at her, not in a comfortable way, Not the way a place you belong pulls at you, more the way an unfinished thing does, the way you come back to a book mid-sentence, the way you can't quite leave a room where you left something important, even if you can't name what it was. The service gate was already open. Priscilla was in the kitchen with her braids pulled back tight, weighing flour for something. She looked up when Maya came in and nodded once, quickly, like they had an understanding now. Maya put her bag away and started with the East Wing bathrooms. Doris arrived at 7:30 and found her already on the second one. She said nothing. That was, in its own way, worse than the commentary. By mid-morning, the rhythm had settled into something that almost felt normal. There was a logic to the house once you stopped fighting it and just listened. The East Wing smelled of cedar. The formal dining room had acoustics that made every small sound enormous, even breathing. The main staircase caught the light from the landing window at 11 o'clock in a way that turned the marble gold, just for about 20 minutes. And Maya stood in that light between tasks and felt briefly something she hadn't felt in a while. Not peace, exactly. Potential. She was polishing the console table in the second hallway when she heard the voice. It came from around the corner, male, unhurried, speaking to someone on the phone. She recognized the tone before she recognized the voice itself. Low, warm, the kind of voice that doesn't announce itself. She heard him turn the corner and she kept her eyes on her work. "Hold on," he said into the phone. Then to her, "Morning." She looked up. Corey. Same plain jacket. Different trousers, same worn boots. He had a paper cup of coffee in one hand and the phone in the other, and he looked exactly like a man who had slept somewhere in this house and woken up and wandered into the hallway without any particular performance attached to it. "Morning," Maya said. He nodded at the console table. "You do that yesterday too?" "That was someone else. I'm redoing it. The product they used left a film." He looked at the table, then at her. "You can see that? If the light hits it right, yes." He stepped a little closer and looked at the surface of the table from the angle she was using. Quiet for a moment. "Huh," he said. "You're right." She kept polishing. He went back to his phone call. Something about a property report, numbers she didn't pay attention to, and drifted down the hall. She heard him stop at the window at the end, the one that looked out over the east garden, and finish his call there with the light behind him. When he came back past, he paused again. "You're Nadine O'Sea's niece," he said. She looked up again. "You know my aunt? She worked here for about 6 months, 2 winters ago. Best person we ever had on the interior. Very clean." He considered the word. Precise. "That's her. Why did she stop?" "Her husband got sick. She went to take care of him." He nodded slowly. He was looking at Maya in that same way as yesterday, attentive, unhurried, like he had time to look and didn't mind using it. "Is he okay?" "He died in February." She said it straight, the way she had learned to say it, without softening it into something easier for other people to receive. "She's doing better now. But she didn't want to come back to this kind of work, so she sent me." "She must trust you a lot," he said. "We trust each other," Maya said. "It goes both ways." Something moved in his face at that, quick and unreadable. He shifted the coffee to his other hand. "My name's Corey," he said, even though she already knew. "I'm around the property sometimes, checking on things." "What kind of things?" "Structural things, mostly. The estate is old. Things need attention." It was a reasonable answer. She couldn't have said exactly why it felt like a door that had been pulled closed, just as she reached for the handle. "I'll let you get back to it," he said. He walked down the hall. At the end, instead of taking the staircase up, he turned right, toward the north wing, toward the courtyard. She watched him go. Then she looked back at the console table and kept polishing. She heard tighten before she saw him. It was just past noon. She had been sent to clean the north hallway windows. which Doris had delivered as an assignment with the specific energy of someone expecting failure. The north hallway ran along the interior wall of the courtyard, and the windows were floor to ceiling, arched, the glass old enough to have a slight ripple to it. She was halfway through the third window when she heard the sound from outside. Not the whimper from yesterday. Something else. A low, happy sound. The kind of sound that domestic animals make when they are with the one person they are completely at ease with. She looked through the glass. Corey was in the courtyard. He was crouched down, eye level with the dog, and Titan's tail was moving with a slow, heavy sweep, the deep wag of a large dog at complete peace. Corey had one hand on the dog's broad head and was speaking to him quietly. She couldn't hear the words through the glass. She could see the shape of them. They knew each other well. That was clear immediately. This wasn't the careful approach of a man being cautious around a dangerous animal. This was a reunion. Titan had pressed his whole body against Corey's side, and the man was using both hands now, one on the dog's head and one along his back. And the dog had his eyes half closed with that particular expression of animal satisfaction that has no human equivalent. Maya watched without meaning to. She noticed that Corey moved differently in the courtyard than he did in the hallways. In the house, he was careful, not nervous but measured. Here, crouching in the afternoon sun with Titan pressed against him, he had a different quality, settled. At home in a way he wasn't quite at home inside. He looked up. He saw her through the glass. She was still holding her cloth, clearly visible, and he didn't look startled. He looked at her for a moment and then, slowly, nodded. She nodded back. She went back to the window. Priscilla came looking for her at 1 o'clock with a sandwich and a look that meant she had information. They sat on the service steps again. The afternoon was warm. Somewhere overhead, a plane crossed the sky and drew a white line through the blue. "I asked around about him," Priscilla said. "About Corey. I asked Ronaldo. He's been here 7 years, longer than any of the other staff. He actually remembers things." Priscilla unwrapped her own lunch and looked at it without eating. "He said there's no maintenance contractor named Corey. There's a company called Aldersham that handles the structural work, but their crew is 4 men, and none of them match the description." Maya was quiet. "He said—" Priscilla stopped, looked around. "He said that about 4 years ago Mr. Hargrove had some kind of falling out with the board of his company or his family, he wasn't sure which. And after that, he started spending less and less time at the estate. Then he stopped coming at all. Mrs. Hargrove runs everything now, and Mr. Hargrove no one really knows. He travels, he's private. They say his company is enormous, but you'd never find his face in a newspaper." "What does he look like?" Maya said. Priscilla looked at her. "Ronaldo's description," Maya said carefully. "Older, silver hair. He said when Mr. Hargrove used to come home, Titan would—" She stopped again. "He said Titan was a completely different animal when Mr. Hargrove was here. Followed him everywhere. Slept outside his door. When he left the last time, the dog stopped eating for a week." Maya took a slow bite of her sandwich. She thought about the courtyard, the way Corey had used both hands, the way Titan had closed his eyes, the way the man moved differently in the open air than inside the house, careful indoors, settled outside, like someone navigating a space where he wasn't sure of his welcome, like someone who had been away a long time and wasn't certain yet what he'd find when he came back. "Priscilla," she said. "I know," Priscilla said. "I know what you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything." "You're thinking it. It doesn't make sense. Why would he be here like that, in plain clothes, no announcement, calling himself—" "I don't know. Ronaldo doesn't know either." Priscilla wrapped up the rest of her lunch. "What I do know is that Doris has been in a very strange mood since yesterday evening, and she wouldn't say why. And this morning, Mrs. Hargrove spent 40 minutes on a phone call and came downstairs looking like someone had moved all the furniture. The plane had finished its line across the sky. The white trail was already breaking apart in the wind. "Don't ask him," Priscilla said quietly. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't ask him. If he wants you to know, he'll tell you. And if he doesn't, you don't want to be the one who pushed." Maya nodded slowly. She thought about that, about not pushing, about patience as a form of respect. Her mother had taught her that too. You don't reach for people, Maya. You make space for them. If they want to come, they'll come. She found him again at 4 o'clock, not in the courtyard, in the library. She had been sent to dust the library shelves, and she had expected to find it empty because the library was always empty. It was one of those rooms that existed more as an idea than a place people actually used. But when she pushed the door open, she found a fire going in the fireplace, and Corey in the leather chair nearest the window with an open book on his knee and his coffee cup, now cold, on the side table beside him. He was asleep, or nearly. His eyes were closed. The book was sliding slightly to one side. His breathing was deep and slow. He had the look of a man who had not slept properly in a long time and had sat down just to rest his eyes and lost the argument. Maya stood in the doorway for a moment. She should leave, come back to the library later. That was the thing to do. She came in quietly, picked up the cloth, and started on the far shelves, the ones furthest from the chair, moving with the careful silence she had learned over years of working in spaces where other people lived. She moved shelf by shelf. She didn't make a sound. She was almost at the middle of the room when he said, without opening his eyes, "You're very quiet." She kept her hands moving. "I didn't want to disturb you." "You didn't." He opened his eyes, looked at the fire for a moment, then at her. "You clean even when no one's watching. That's when it matters most." He considered this. "Most people do the minimum when no one's watching. My mother didn't raise a minimum kind of person. Where is she now?" She paused just briefly. "She passed 3 years ago." He was quiet. "I'm sorry." "So am I." She moved to the next shelf. "It was fast, which is a mercy, I suppose, but it doesn't feel like one at the time." "No," he said. "It doesn't." There was something in his voice when he said it, a weight that wasn't just sympathy, something personal and unresolved. She didn't ask. She kept cleaning. He watched the fire. "Titan let you take the thorn out yesterday," he said after a while. "He had no choice. It was hurting him. He always has a choice. He's let people with pliers and treats and professional handlers try to handle him and come away bleeding." He turned the book over in his hands. "He chose you." "Animals know," she said simply. "Know what?" Who's afraid of them? Who isn't? Who needs something from them? Who doesn't? She glanced at him. "Titan doesn't want anything from me, and I don't want anything from him. We're even." Corey looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked back at the fire. "That's the clearest thing anyone's said in this house in a long time," he said quietly. She didn't answer that. She just finished the shelf and moved to the next one. The fire popped. The afternoon light shifted. Outside the library window, the garden was turning gold. Neither of them said anything else. It was, Maya thought, one of the most comfortable silences she had sat inside in years. She didn't know why that frightened her slightly. She was at the gate when Doris caught her. End of day. Coat on, bag in hand, the sky doing that deep blue thing again that she was starting to think of as the estate's signature color. Doris stood 4 feet away with her hands clasped in front of her and her face arranged into the expression she reserved for things she considered beneath addressing but would address anyway. "Stay away from the man calling himself Corey," Doris said. Maya looked at her. "He is not maintenance staff. He is not authorized to be interacting with new day staff. And if Mrs. Hargrove learns that you have been spending time in the library with an unauthorized visitor, she will have the grounds to terminate you immediately, regardless of what the dog does or does not do in your presence." She paused. "Do you understand me?" "I was cleaning the library shelves," Maya said. "He was in a chair." "I understand that." "Then I'm not sure what you're asking me to do." "I'm asking you to be wise," Doris said. "I'm asking you to understand that this house has layers, and you are standing at the very bottom of them, and some of those layers are not your concern and never will be." She unclenched her hands. "Go home, Miss Ose." Maya went home. But as she walked to her car, she thought about what Doris had said. Not authorized. Not, he doesn't belong here. Not, he's a stranger. Authorized was a specific word. It was a word you used about people who had a relationship to a place, whose access was a formal thing that could be granted or withdrawn. It was a word you used about someone who belonged somewhere, once. She sat in her car for a moment before starting the engine. She thought, he came back for the dog. She thought, or maybe he came back for something else. She thought, either way, he's watching me. And I'm not sure yet whether that's because he trusts me or because he's deciding. She drove home through the blue evening. In the north courtyard, behind the limestone walls, Titan lay in the patch of last sunlight with his chin on his paws, waiting, the way dogs always wait, with a patience that puts human patience to shame. He had called himself Corey and told her he was there to check on things, and both of those statements were true, and neither of them were the whole truth. And somewhere between what he'd said and what he'd meant was a story Maya hadn't been told yet. Kindness has a cost. By the third morning, Maya understood the house's moods. Not the rooms, the moods. The way the air in the east wing went thin and watchful whenever Mrs. Hargrove had slept badly. The way the kitchen vibrated at a lower frequency on days when Doris was in a particularly punishing frame of mind. The way the whole estate seemed to exhale when neither woman was on the ground floor. She arrived at 7 and found the house in that exhale. No Doris in the service corridor. No movement from the upper floors. Priscilla was already in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, and she looked up and said, "Quiet morning," the way a sailor might say calm seas, with the understanding that the observation was temporary. Maya started her work. She was thorough and efficient, and she didn't hum anymore. Not because Doris had told her not to, but because she was listening instead. She had found that listening to a house was its own form of work. You learned things. You learned where the drafts came from, and which windows had swollen frames, and which floors creaked under specific weight. You learned who walked fast and who walked slow, and what each pace meant. At 8:15, she heard a door on the upper floor, and the slow, deliberate pace that meant Mrs. Hargrove. At 8:40, she heard a quicker, lighter tread, one she didn't immediately recognize. At 9, she was in the formal dining room, repolishing the credenza, when she heard a sound from the east hallway that stopped her hands. A sharp, involuntary intake of breath, male, followed immediately by the sound of something being set down hard on a surface. She put the cloth down and moved to the hallway door. The east hallway was empty except for Corey, who was standing with his back against the wall and his right hand cradled against his chest and his face doing the work of not showing how much something hurt. He had a gash across his palm, deep, clean-edged, still welling. He was looking at it with the calm assessment of a man deciding how serious the problem was and coming back with pretty serious. "What happened?" Maya said. "Box cutter," he said. "In the storage room. Slipped." She crossed the hall. He held the hand out without being asked, an automatic gesture, as if showing a wound to someone he trusted was just something he did without thinking about it. She cupped his hand in both of hers and looked at the cut. "You need pressure on this right now," she said. "Come with me." "It'll be fine." "It won't. Come with me." She walked. He followed. She took him to the small staff bathroom off the east corridor, the one she'd cleaned that morning, the one with the first aid kit under the sink that she'd catalogued on her first day. She ran the water until it was clean and cold, and held his hand under it, and watched the water run pink. He didn't complain. He stood at the sink with the patient stillness of a man who had been through worse, and didn't make noise about it. "How deep does it feel?" she asked. "I've had worse." "That's not what I asked." A brief pause. "Not deep enough for stitches, I think." "I'll tell you whether it needs stitches." She blotted it carefully with clean gauze from the kit and took a close look. The cut was about 2 inches, clean across the meatiest part of his palm. It had bled a lot, which was a good sign, no tendon involvement that she could see. He could flex his fingers without limitation. "No stitches," she confirmed, "but it needs to be closed properly, or it'll open every time you use your hand." She worked efficiently, steri strips from the kit, butterfly tension on the wound edges, gauze padding, medical tape wrapped just snug enough. She had done this before. Her uncle had worked construction for 30 years, and she had patched him up more times than she could count with exactly this kind of kit. Corey watched her hands. "You've done this before," he said. "My uncle." She tore the tape cleanly with her teeth. He thought first aid was for people who couldn't improvise. Was he wrong? He was also missing the tip of his left ring finger, so... She pressed the last strip flat. "Make a gentle fist." He did. The closure held. "Good," she said. She stepped back, giving him the sink. He looked at his hand for a moment, the neat wrapping, the clean edges. Something in his face went soft. "Thank you," he said, and there was a weight in those 2 words that exceeded the moment. Like he wasn't just thanking her for the bandage. She was putting the supplies back in the kit when he said quietly, "You're good at taking care of things." Things or people? Both. He turned to lean against the counter, his bandaged hand held slightly out to keep it clean. "The windows in the north hallway are cleaner than they've been since the house was built. Titan is walking correctly on that paw, and my hand is going to heal clean because of how you wrapped it." "That's just paying attention," she said. "It's more than that." He looked at her directly. "Most people see what's in front of them. You see what's wrong with it." She closed the first aid kit and set it on the edge of the sink. She looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes," he said. "Why do you move differently inside the house than outside?" He was quiet for a moment. Something shifted behind his eyes, careful and considered, like a man who was turning a question over to find its underside before answering. "Do I?" he said finally. "Yes." She didn't soften it. "Outside, in the garden, with the dog, you move like the place belongs to you. Inside, you're careful, like someone who's not sure of his welcome." The quiet that followed was a different kind than the library quiet from yesterday, heavier, charged. "Some places," he said slowly, "you've been away from long enough that you're not sure who you'll find when you go back in." "Who did you find?" His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Different people than I expected." His eyes moved to hers, and 1 or 2 I didn't expect at all. She held his gaze for a moment, then she picked up the first aid kit and put it back under the sink. "You should keep that hand dry for at least 6 hours, she said, "and don't lift anything with it." "Yes, ma'am," he said, quietly amused. She walked out of the bathroom, back into the east hallway, and was halfway to the dining room before she realized her own hands were steady and calm, which was how she knew she was doing the opposite of what she felt. She found out about the meeting by accident. At 11, she was sent to retrieve a tablecloth from the linen closet on the second floor, which required just this once, crossing into the family zone that was normally off-limits to day staff. Doris gave her the key card and specific instructions. Closet at the end of the east corridor, third shelf, ivory damask. Do not deviate. She didn't deviate. But the second floor had different acoustics than the first. Sound travelled differently, gathered in corners, moved through walls. And the sitting room at the top of the stairs, its door not quite fully closed, was carrying a conversation. She heard her own name. She didn't stop walking. She didn't slow down. She went to the closet, retrieved the tablecloth and headed back. But she had heard enough. The girl has been in contact with him twice that I know of. Doris says she's been asking questions. That's not the issue. The issue is that if he talks to her before we've had a chance to... Then the door at the end of the east corridor opened, and she heard footsteps approaching, and she kept walking, steady, calm, the tablecloth over her arm, eyes forward. It was Mrs. Hargrove who came out of the sitting room. She stopped when she saw Maya. "What are you doing up here?" "Retrieving the ivory damask tablecloth. Doris sent me." She held it up. "I have the key card." Mrs. Hargrove looked at the tablecloth, at Maya, at the hallway behind Maya, as if checking whether anything was disturbed. "Go back downstairs," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Maya went back downstairs. She stood in the east hallway for a moment, alone, with the tablecloth over her arm. Before we've had a chance to what?" She folded the tablecloth more precisely and delivered it to the dining room and said nothing to anyone. At noon, Doris called her into the kitchen for what she framed as a performance check. It was 12 minutes long. It covered the repolishing of the credenza, which Doris considered redundant, the time Maya had spent in the first aid room with the maintenance visitor, which Doris described as an inappropriate extension of your duties, and a general observation that day, staff who inserted themselves into matters beyond their designated tasks were frequently let go before the end of probationary periods. Maya listened. "Do you have anything to say?" Doris asked when she was done. The credenza had a product film that would have shown in direct light during any dinner function, Maya said. The visitor had an open wound that needed closure. "And I've taken one break in 3 days, which is within my contracted terms." Doris looked at her for a long time. "You're not a minimum kind of person," she said. It was what Maya had said to Corey the day before. She had no idea how Doris could know that. "Unless..." "Are you going to let me go?" Maya asked. "Not today," Doris said. "Today I'm advising you." She straightened a dish towel that didn't need straightening. "This house has politics, Miss O.C. It has history. People who don't understand those things get caught in them. You seem sharp enough to be warned. I'm warning you." "What should I be warned about specifically?" Doris looked at her one final time. "About the difference," she said carefully, "between a man who says he's checking on things and a man who is checking on things for a reason." She picked up her clipboard. "Back to work." She saw him once more that afternoon. Late, past 4, the house already settling into its end-of-day quiet. She was collecting cleaning supplies from the storage closet at the back of the west wing when she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. His pace, she recognized it now without trying. And then, voices. 2 of them. She recognized the second voice as well. Mrs. Hargrove. She didn't move. The storage closet door was slightly ajar, and she stood completely still among the mops and bottles, with the particular skill of a woman who had learned, a long time ago, that stillness made you invisible. "You can't stay here indefinitely," Mrs. Hargrove said. Her voice had a quality Maya hadn't heard from her before, not the management tone or the cold inventory voice, something beneath both of those. Raw and controlled in equal measure, like something she'd been holding for a long time and was very careful not to let go. "I'm not here indefinitely." His voice, patient, a little tired. "Then what are you here for?" A long pause. "Things I should have seen to a long time ago," he said. "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." Silence. Footsteps. One set, moving away, his, going toward the north side, and then Mrs. Hargrove's, staying still. Not moving for a very long time. Maya stood in the closet and didn't breathe. When she finally heard Mrs. Hargrove's heels move away, she let out a slow breath. She stood there another minute. She thought, things I should have seen to a long time ago. She thought about Titan, alone in the courtyard for years. She thought about a dog that stopped eating for a week when someone left. She thought about a library that smelled of a fire that had clearly been made by someone that morning, when the room had been empty for who knew how long. She thought about Doris's word, authorized, like someone whose access was a formal thing, that could be granted or withdrawn, or that was already there, underneath everything, already there, waiting to be used again. She picked up her supplies. She walked back to work. Priscilla found her at 5 at the end of her shift and pressed a small paper bag into her hands. "What is this?" Maya said. "Lemon cookies. I made too many." Priscilla's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes weren't. "You look like someone who's been thinking very hard all day and didn't eat enough." Maya looked in the bag. "You baked these for me. I baked them for excess reasons." "Priscilla, go home, Maya." She gave her a small push toward the gate. "Come back tomorrow and keep your head down, and don't let Doris see you eating cookies on the steps." Maya went. She ate a cookie on the way to her car. It was very good, bright with lemon, soft in the center. The kind of small thing that means more than it should on a day when most things were complicated. She thought, whatever is going on in that house, these are real people in the middle of it. She thought, I am not here for the politics. I'm here to do my job. She thought, I just wish my job didn't keep putting me in the middle of something I don't understand. At the gate, she stopped. She looked back. The north courtyard wasn't visible from here. The limestone walls blocked it. But above the roofline of the main house, the last light of the afternoon was spreading in long, warm bands across the blue, and she could see, just barely, the edge of the fountain catching the gold. She thought about him in the chair in the library, the book sliding off his knee, the tired, familiar way he'd moved in the courtyard with the dog. She thought, he came back to something, or someone. She didn't know yet that the thing he had come back to was already more complicated than she understood, that the meeting upstairs had not been a conversation between a husband and wife, that what she had heard through the storage closet door was only the first volley of something that had been building for years and was about to land in ways no one on the estate was fully prepared for, including Maya, especially Maya. She was one day away from the moment everything changed. She didn't know that yet. She went home and ate another cookie and called her aunt. "How is it?" Nadine asked. "Strange," Maya said honestly. "Strange bad?" She thought about it. The library quiet. The first aid bathroom. The way he'd said you're good at taking care of things. The way Titan had sighed, deep and whole, the first time she put her hand on his head. "Strange, interesting," she said. Her aunt was quiet for a moment. "Interesting can go either way, Maya." "I know," she said. "Are you being careful?" She looked out her apartment window at the night sky, a different shade of dark than the estate's blue. Brighter here, with more light pollution, less room for stars. "I'm being careful," she said, "but I'm not sure careful is enough." She had bandaged his hand, and he had thanked her with a weight that exceeded the moment, and she was starting to understand that in this house every small thing carried a history she hadn't been given, and every kindness was a thread in something larger she couldn't yet see the shape of. The name she wasn't supposed to hear. The fourth morning arrived grey, Not stormy, just heavy, the kind of overcast that sits low over a city and makes everything feel slightly muffled. Maya drove to Brackenwood Lane with her windshield wipers on their slowest setting and the radio off. She had slept badly. Not because anything bad had happened, but because her mind wouldn't stop pulling threads. Before we've had a chance to, things I should have seen to a long time ago. Authorized. She pulled through the service gate at 6:55 and sat in her car for exactly 1 minute, breathing evenly, and then she got out and went to work. Priscilla was already in the kitchen. This morning she didn't say anything at all, just nodded and pushed a thermos of coffee across the counter without being asked. Maya took it. The first sip was strong and slightly sweet, exactly right. She started with the West Wing today. Doris had left a task sheet on the counter, typewritten, itemized, 12 things, at least 3 of which would have taken a full-time cleaner a complete workday. Maya read it once, folded it into her apron pocket, and started at the top. The house was quieter than usual. She noticed it by 9, a quality of absence that was different from the normal morning lull. No footsteps from upstairs, no distant phone calls. Even the usual sounds of the estate's outer crew, the gardeners, the delivery buzzer, were absent. Just the low hush of a large house under a grey sky, and Maya moving through it like water finding its level. She was almost peaceful. Then she turned the corner into the west corridor and nearly walked into a man she had never seen before. He was younger than Corey, late 40s, she guessed, and dressed well. Expensive coat, dark trousers with a deliberate crease. He carried himself with the ease of someone who expected rooms to accommodate him, not the other way around. He had a phone in one hand and a leather portfolio under his arm, and he looked at Maya the way some people look at furniture when they're trying to decide whether they want it moved. "You," he said, just that. No name, no greeting. "Good morning," Maya said. "Where's Estella?" He said it like the name was a complaint. "I don't know who that is. I'm day staff, just started this week." He looked at her the way he'd been looking at the furniture. "Get Mrs. Hargrove. Tell her Whitfield is here." Maya kept her expression neutral. "Of course." She went to the intercom panel in the East Hall and pressed the button for the upstairs sitting room. 3 rings, then Mrs. Hargrove's voice clipped, "Yes." "There's a Mr. Whitfield here, ma'am, in the west corridor." A pause, then different. "Tell him I'll be right down, and stay out of the West Wing for the next hour." "Yes, ma'am." She relayed the message and retreated to the east side of the house. She had plenty to do. She did it. But the West Wing shared a ventilation system with the East Corridor utility closet, and old houses carried sound in unexpected ways, and Maya was in the utility closet restocking a cleaning cart when the voices started. She didn't choose to listen. She chose not to move, which is slightly different. Whitfield's voice was the kind that had been trained for boardrooms, precise, certain, carrying without volume. "He can't keep doing this, Genevieve. He disappears for months, no contact, no direction, and then he shows up here and expects everything to sit still and wait." Mrs. Hargrove's voice was lower, controlled. "He has the right to come home. He abdicated that right when he left the board without a transition plan. We've been running Hargrove Holdings on provisional authority for 2 years. He did not abdicate anything. The estate documents haven't been updated. The trust is in a disputed structure. If something happened to Cornelius tomorrow, the name landed like a stone, dropped into still water. Cornelius. Maya stood absolutely still in the utility closet with a box of cleaning supplies in her hands. Then the estate reverts to the 2019 structure, and my clients are exposed to 8 figures of liability. He needs to sign this week. That's why I came. And I'm telling you, he's not ready to... He doesn't have the luxury of not being ready. Cornelius has to come back to the table. This is not something he can defer indefinitely by playing at being a whatever he's been doing out here. A pause. He's here now, isn't he? I can have the documents ready by tomorrow morning. You arrange the meeting. The voices moved. Footsteps. Then silence. Maya stood in the utility closet for another 30 seconds, not because she needed to stay hidden. She had every right to be where she was, but because she needed 30 seconds to let what she'd heard settle into something she could hold. Cornelius Hargrove. She set the cleaning supplies on the cart. She backed out of the closet and closed it quietly. She walked down the east corridor at her normal pace, put her cart away, and went to the laundry room and ran water in the sink for a moment with no particular purpose except to have something to do with her hands, while her mind caught up. Corey, short for Cornelius, a private abbreviation, a name to be used by no one who might recognize the real one. She thought about everything she'd observed over 4 days and lined it up against this single fact and watched it all rearrange. The way the house changed register when he walked through it. Not the deference owed to a contractor, but the particular, subtle electricity of a space responding to its owner. The way Doris had said authorized instead of stranger. The way Mrs. Hargrove had stood in the storage closet hallway after he left and hadn't moved for a very long time. The way you stand in the aftermath of a conversation with someone who still has power over things you care about. The way Titan had pressed his entire body against him in the courtyard. Titan, who had stopped eating for a week when he left. This is his house. All of it. The French limestone and the iron gates and the fountain and the north courtyard and the library with the fire he'd made himself. His, all of it. And he had been here for 4 days, calling himself a maintenance contractor, and she had bandaged his hand and talked to him about her mother and cleaned shelves around him while he slept in a chair. And not once had he told her the truth. She turned off the tap. She dried her hands. She went back to work. She saw him at 11. He was coming from the north wing, jacket on, the bandaged hand held slightly away from his side, moving with that indoor careful quality she now understood differently, not uncertain, deliberate. A man in his own house choosing to move like a guest. He saw her and he didn't look away. She looked at him. She held his gaze for exactly the time it took her to pass him in the corridor. 3, 4 seconds, and she let him see, just plainly, that something had shifted in the way she was looking at him. Not hostility, not accusation, just, I know something now that I didn't know before, and I haven't decided yet what to do with it. He stopped. Maya, excuse me, she said, quietly, evenly. I have work to do. She kept walking. She heard him stand still for a moment behind her. She didn't turn around. At noon, she found Priscilla in the kitchen and pulled her just outside the service door. Cornelius, Maya said. Priscilla looked at her. Cornelius Hargrove, Maya said. That's who he is. Priscilla didn't look shocked. She looked like someone who had suspected and was now hearing confirmation and wasn't sure whether to be relieved or frightened. How do you know? I heard it. By accident. She said it clearly so there would be no question about eavesdropping. A man named Whitfield came this morning. Business. He said the name. Priscilla leaned back against the door. Oh, she said quietly, you already suspected. After what Ronaldo said, yes, I suspected. She crossed her arms. Does he know that you know? Not in words, but he could see it in my face, I think. What are you going to do? Maya thought about this. It was the practical question, the one that mattered. Nothing, she said finally. My job, same as every other day. Maya, he's not hurting anyone by being here. Whatever is happening between him and that family is not my business. She looked at Priscilla directly. But I wanted you to know, in case it matters later. Priscilla was quiet for a moment. Why tell me? Because you've been looking out for me since day one, and I don't like owing debts that aren't accounted for. She almost smiled. Also because if something happens and everyone acts surprised, I want at least one other person to not be. Priscilla nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. He found her in the garden at 2. Not the north courtyard, the east garden, the formal one with the geometric hedges and the gravel paths between the flower beds. She was cleaning the outdoor statuary, which was a weekly task involving a soft brush and a specific stone soap and more patience than it sounded like. She heard him coming. The gravel announced his footsteps clearly, and she kept her brush moving. He stopped 3 feet away. I know you know, he said. I know, she said. A long pause. How? Whitfield, this morning. He exhaled slowly, the sound of a man releasing something he'd been holding. I was going to tell you myself. Were you? Yes. He said it without defensiveness. Simple, direct. Today, actually. I'd made up my mind last night. She turned to face him. He was standing in the grey afternoon light, with his hands loose at his sides, and his face open in a way it hadn't been in the house. No careful performance, no management of what he revealed. Just a man standing in his own garden looking at someone he owed an explanation. Why? She said. Why are you here like this, your own home? He looked at the gravel path for a moment. Because I needed to come back and I didn't know what I'd find, what it would feel like. He paused. And because I didn't want reactions. The kind of reactions you get when people know who you are before they've had a chance to know who you are. Those are different things? In my experience, yes, very. She considered this. How long have you been gone? 2 years, roughly. And Titan? Something moved through his face. Titan I have missed every day. He stopped eating when you left. He looked at her. Who told you that? Ronaldo. He nodded slowly, looking away. I didn't know that. His voice had a rougher quality now. I should have made better arrangements for him. A pause. I thought he'd adjust. They told me he'd adjust. He didn't. No. I can see that he didn't. He looked at the eastern wing of the house. Some things don't adjust, they just wait. She watched him. He was 60-something and silver-haired, and reportedly the owner of a company worth amounts she couldn't clearly picture, and he was standing in his own garden in plain boots, talking about his dog with the same quiet grief as any person who had left something they loved and come back to see the cost. Why did you leave? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment. She expected him to retreat, to give her the door-pulled-closed answer, the contractor version of himself. Instead, he said simply, because I thought it was the right thing, for people around me. I thought removing myself would simplify things. He paused. I was wrong. As it turns out, when you remove yourself from things, they don't simplify. They just deteriorate without you. She thought about that. She thought about people who step back thinking they're helping and find out later that their absence was its own kind of damage. She thought about the library, unlit for 2 years until he lit a fire in it this week. She thought about Titan and the week he stopped eating. Why are you talking to me? She said. You could talk to anyone. I know. He looked at her steadily. But most people in this house are managing me. Even the ones who mean well. You're the first person I've met here this week who was just present, without an agenda. He paused. You cleaned the shelves around me while I slept and didn't make it strange. She almost laughed. Most people don't fall asleep in rooms they're supposed to be maintaining. Most people, he said very quietly, haven't been sleeping well for 2 years. The garden was very still. The grey sky had lightened slightly, the cloud cover thinning at the edges. In the east flower bed, something small and determined was blooming, despite the overcast. She didn't know enough about flowers to name it, but it was a vivid orange, aggressive and cheerful against the pale stone. What happens now? She said. Whitfield wants me to sign documents. And will you? Yes, he said. It's time. Something settled in his face when he said it. Decided. There's a great deal that's been deferred. It's time to stop deferring. He said it the way a man says something he's been arriving at slowly and has finally arrived. She nodded. She turned back to the statuary and picked up her brush. He stayed for a moment, as if there was more he wanted to say and hadn't found the shape of it yet. Then he said, "Thank you for the other day. The hand. It's healing well?" "Cleanly." He looked at the bandage, now covered with a light glove. "You said you learned from your uncle. He needed a lot of patches. Smart of him to have you around." She kept her brush moving. "He'd tell you he was fine on his own." "They always say that." He put his gloved hand in his jacket pocket. "The ones who most need someone to look after them are always the ones who insist most loudly that they don't." She paused, looked at him sideways. "Are you talking about your uncle or yourself?" He was quiet for exactly one beat. Then, for the first time since she'd met him, Cornelius Hargrove smiled, fully, unguarded, with his whole face. "Good afternoon, Maya," he said. He walked back toward the house. She watched him go. Then she looked at the orange flower in the bed beside her and thought, tomorrow something is going to happen, and this careful thing that's been building between conversations and bandages and dog hair on a uniform, this is either going to survive it or it isn't. She picked up her brush. She kept working. She didn't see Doris standing at the second-floor window watching the garden path. She didn't see Mrs. Hargrove standing just behind Doris, arms crossed, face unreadable. She didn't see the way Mrs. Hargrove turned from the window and said something quiet to Doris, and the way Doris nodded once, tight and decided. She didn't see any of it. She just worked. And somewhere in the north courtyard, Titan raised his head and scented the afternoon air and settled again, slow and patient. Tomorrow was coming. She had learned his real name by accident, and he had told her the rest by choice. And the distance between those two things was exactly the measure of what had grown between them, without either of them intending it. The floor drops out. The fifth morning the sky came back blue. Not the estate's evening blue. A different kind, bright and clean, the kind that follows a grey day and feels like a correction. Maya drove to Brackenwood Lane with the windows cracked and the morning air moving through her car and something taut in her chest that she couldn't entirely account for. She had told herself last night, today is just another day. Do your work. Stay out of things that aren't your business. But she had also told herself that for 4 days running and managed to wind up in the middle of something enormous anyway. So she understood that her intentions and the house's intentions were not necessarily aligned. She got there at 7. Priscilla was in the kitchen. She gave Maya one look and said, "Something's happening today." "How do you know?" "The caterers came at 6. There are flowers being set up in the formal dining room, and Mrs. Hargrove has been up since 5, and she's in the kind of mood that comes before a performance." She handed Maya the coffee thermos. "Ronaldo says a car arrived at the estate at 11 last night and didn't leave." "Whitfield?" "Probably." Priscilla was quiet. "Or the board members. Ronaldo wasn't sure." Maya took the coffee. "What's the task sheet?" "Doris left 2. 1 for the East Wing as normal, and 1—" Priscilla paused. "One that says you're to stay on the east side of the house all day. That's all it says. Stay east." "Did Doris say why?" "Doris didn't say anything. She left it and left." Priscilla lowered her voice, even though they were alone. "Maya, whatever is about to happen in this house, I think it's big. And I think it involves the man you talked to in the garden yesterday. And I think Mrs. Hargrove wants you as far from it as possible." Maya thought about the window. Doris and Mrs. Hargrove watching the garden path. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you'll stay east?" "Okay, I hear you." She picked up her cleaning caddy. "I'll do what I can." Priscilla looked like she wanted to say more. She didn't. She stayed east until 9:15. At 9:15, the housekeeping call system, a small panel in the east corridor with room indicators, lit up for the formal dining room, which was on the west side of the house. It lit up 3 times in quick succession. The code for immediate response, not routine. Maya looked at the panel. She looked at her task sheet. She went. The formal dining room was being set for 12. White linen, crystal, the tall silver candlesticks from the upper sideboard, the flowers, cream and deep burgundy, already arranged in 3 large vases down the center of the table. It should have been beautiful. It was, technically. But there was something performative about it, the way a stage set is technically a room without being one. A young woman Maya hadn't seen before was struggling with the placement of the last candelabra. It had a weighted base, and she was trying to move it without scratching the linen and failing at both. Maya crossed the room, took the base with her, shifted the protective pad and set it cleanly. "Thank you," the young woman breathed. "What do you need?" "The salt cellars from the butler's pantry, the crystal ones, not the silver. And someone needs to confirm the seating cards. They're in the wrong order." Maya spent 20 minutes in the dining room. She found the crystal salt cellars. She reordered the seating cards by the handwritten list she found tucked under the floral arrangement. She didn't read the names, just matched the order. She straightened 3 place settings. She polished a water spot from the largest centerpiece vase. She was on her way out, back to the east wing, when she heard the voices in the main hall. Not raised, not arguing. Something formalized, the way voices sound when a meeting has been called and everyone has agreed to behave. She was too far to hear words. She kept moving toward the east corridor. Then she heard her name. It stopped her feet. His voice, low, clear. Not shouted, just carrying, the way a voice carries in a large entry hall when the acoustics cooperate. "And I want Maya Osei included. She should hear this." A second voice she didn't know, clipped and professional. "Mr. Hargrove, that's not standard." "I didn't ask what was standard." Then Mrs. Hargrove's voice, sharp enough to cut. "She is day staff. She has no role in a family." "Genevieve." One word. Quiet. Final. "Please." Silence. Maya stood in the east corridor doorway. A moment later, Doris appeared at the far end of the hall. Doris's face was the most unreadable it had ever been. Not controlled, not performing, genuinely blank, the way a face goes when it has run out of prepared expressions. "Mr. Hargrove is asking for you," Doris said. Her voice was entirely flat. Maya walked toward her. The main hall was not where the gathering was. That was just where the voices had been. Men in good suits crossing from the parlor to the formal sitting room. Whitfield was there with a document portfolio. 2 other men Maya didn't know. A woman with reading glasses pushed up on her head who appeared to be legal counsel, and Cornelius. He was standing at the entrance of the formal sitting room in a charcoal suit, not the plain jacket, not the work boots, a 3-piece suit with a white dress shirt and dark tie, and his silver hair brushed back, and his posture entirely different from anything she had seen in 4 days. Not rigid, not performed, just present, in the full sense of the word, in the way that a person is present when they have decided to stop running from something and turn to face it. He saw her come in through the hall, and something in his face settled. "Thank you for coming," he said. She almost said I was summoned, but she didn't. "Of course," she said. Mrs. Hargrove was seated across the room, her back extremely straight, her face a careful composition of neutral. She looked at Maya with the particular expression of someone watching something happen that they cannot stop and have decided to manage instead. Doris stood beside the door, still blank, still unreadable. Whitfield cleared his throat. Mr. Hargrove, the formal matter should— In a moment. Cornelius turned to the room. He looked at Mrs. Hargrove, at the lawyers, at Whitfield, and then at Doris. One even, deliberate sweep, like a man taking stock. "I want to say something first," he said. "Before the documents, before the legal portion—" He paused. He did not look at notes. He was not performing. "I left this house 2 years ago because I thought I had become a problem, because the people around me, and they know who they are, convinced me over a considerable period of time that my presence was the source of the difficulty, that things would function better without me." His voice was even, without anger. "They were wrong. Things did not function better. They deteriorated, slowly, then all at once, which is how those things go." The room was very still. "I came back this week because it was time, but I came back without announcement because I needed to see the house as it actually was. Not as it would be prepared for my arrival." He let that sit. "I have seen it." Whitfield opened his mouth. Cornelius looked at him. Whitfield closed it again. "Miss Osei." He turned to her, and she felt every pair of eyes in the room follow his gaze to her face, and she kept her expression steady and open. "You have been in this house for 4 days. You have done your job with more thoroughness and more genuine care than anything I have observed in this household in the 2 years of records I reviewed before arriving. You treated an injured dog with kindness when everyone else treated him with fear. You treated a man you thought was a contractor with dignity when there was no reason for you to extend any. And when you discovered that the contractor was not who he said he was—" He paused. "You came back the next morning, did your job, and did not make it strange." The silence was complete. Maya held his gaze. She didn't look away and she didn't look embarrassed. She just listened. "This house," Cornelius said, turning back to the room, "has had a problem with people for some time. Not a staffing problem, a character problem." His voice remained even. "That problem is going to be corrected. Today." Mrs. Hargrove rose from her chair. "Cornelius, Genevieve." He looked at her, fully, without anger and without apology. "Please, sit down." She sat down. Maya watched it happen. She had seen Mrs. Hargrove manage every room she entered. She had never seen her managed. The formal portion took 40 minutes. Documents, signatures. Cornelius signed where indicated, reviewed what Whitfield presented, asked 2 questions that were apparently sharp enough that the lawyer with the reading glasses on her head nodded approvingly both times. The company's provisional structure was ended. The estate's trust was updated. Something about a holding entity that Maya didn't follow and didn't need to. She sat in a chair near the door that one of the junior lawyers had moved for her, which was a small, strange kindness she hadn't expected, and she stayed quiet and watched and understood that she was witnessing something significant without fully understanding the geography of it. At one point, Cornelius paused over a document and looked up at her across the room, just briefly, just checking. The way you check when you want to know if someone is still there, and she gave him a small, quiet nod. He went back to signing. When it was over, Whitfield gathered his documents and left with evident relief. The other suits followed. The lawyer with the reading glasses shook Cornelius's hand and then, unexpectedly, shook Maya's, warm and brief, on her way out. The room emptied down to 4 people: Cornelius, Mrs. Hargrove, Doris, Maya. What followed was not loud. That was the thing Maya remembered afterward. She had expected loud. She had prepared herself for it. But what happened instead was quiet, in the way that only certain conversations are quiet. The ones where the stakes are so high that raised voices would feel inadequate. Mrs. Hargrove stood. She looked at Maya. "You should not be here for this," she said. Her voice was controlled and cool, and underneath it was something shaking. "I asked her to stay," Cornelius said. "She is staff." "She is a person," he said. "And she has been in this house while you and Doris have spent 4 days attempting to manage her, redirect her and intimidate her out of a job she has done without a single fault. I would like her to be present for what comes next. Mrs. Hargrove looked at him for a long moment. And what comes next? She said. Changes, he said simply. Doris. He turned. Doris stood very straight. Her face was still blank, but her eyes, Maya saw, were wet. You have run this household for 11 years, Cornelius said. I know that, I don't dismiss it, but you have run it in recent years, in the service of an agenda that was not your own, and was not this house's. You followed instructions you should have questioned. He paused. I'm not going to punish you for that. You'll receive your full severance and a reference I will write myself. But you're done here. Doris nodded once. She left the room without looking at anyone. Not at Cornelius, not at Mrs. Hargrove, not at Maya. The door closed behind her. Cornelius turned to Mrs. Hargrove. The conversation that followed was the one Maya felt most like she shouldn't be witnessing. Low, specific, about arrangements and assets and lawyers and timelines. Mrs. Hargrove listened with her hands in her lap, and her jaw set, and her composure perfect, and something behind her eyes that might have been grief, and might have been fury, and was probably both. When he was done, she stood. She looked at Maya one final time. It was the longest she had ever looked at her directly. You're very quiet, Mrs. Hargrove said, for someone at the center of all this. I'm not at the center of anything, Maya said. I cleaned your house. Something moved through Mrs. Hargrove's face. She walked out. The room was empty except for the two of them. The afternoon light was moving through the tall windows now, the morning overcast fully gone, the blue sky doing its full work on the estate. The chandelier above the formal sitting room caught the light and distributed it in small bright pieces across the ceiling. Cornelius sat down. He looked, suddenly, very tired. Maya stayed in her chair across the room. I'm sorry, he said, for not telling you who I was. You told me on the 4th day. Most people in your position wouldn't have told me at all. Most people in my position haven't had someone bandage their hand without making a production of it. He looked at his gloved hand. Or clean shelves around them while they slept without waking them up. You needed to sleep. I needed a lot of things I haven't had for 2 years. He looked at the window. I need someone to run this household, properly, with authority, and with the kind of care I've seen in 4 days from one person and not from anyone else in a very long time. She looked at him carefully. That's a different job than the one I was hired for, she said. It is, he agreed. It pays differently. It comes with a proper title and proper authority, and the ability to hire and direct your own staff. He paused. And it involves staying. Not day shifts. Staying? Is that a formal offer or a thought you're having? It's a formal offer. The corner of his mouth moved. I can have Whitfield draw up a contract if you need it in writing. I'd want it in writing, she said. Something warm crossed his face. Of course you would. I'd also want to talk to my aunt first. Of course. She was quiet for a moment. And I'd want to be able to bring Priscilla into whatever new structure gets built here. She's good. Done. And Titan needs a proper veterinarian visit. That paw healed well, but he should be checked properly, not patched by a maid with a first aid kit. Agreed. He was watching her with something that looked like, she didn't have a word for it quite, like relief, like the feeling of water after a long, dry stretch. Anything else? She looked at him. He looked at her. The chandelier light moved across the ceiling between them, slow and small and gold. Not yet, she said. He nodded, as if not yet was an answer he understood completely and intended to take as encouragement. She found Priscilla in the kitchen afterward, standing at the counter with her arms crossed and her eyes wide. I saw Doris leave, Priscilla said. She had her coat and her bag. She walked past me and didn't say a word. She's gone, Maya said. Priscilla stared. What happened in there? Maya looked at her for a moment. At the kitchen, the warm, real kitchen, the one that actually ran the house, the one that had fed her and made her tea and produced lemon cookies at the exact right moment. Do you want to keep working here? Maya said. Priscilla blinked. What? I've been asked to take on a different role. I'll need people around me I trust. She paused. I trust you. Do you want to stay? Priscilla's mouth opened, closed. You'd be reporting to me, Maya added, not to someone who treats you like furniture. Priscilla looked at the ceiling for a moment, apparently doing something complicated with her feelings. Yes, she said. Obviously, yes. Good. Maya took the thermos from the counter and poured 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Priscilla. Then I think we both need to sit down for a minute. Because this day has been something. Priscilla took the coffee. They sat at the kitchen table. Outside the window, the blue sky was doing its whole generous thing, and in the north courtyard, though they couldn't see it from here, Titan was stretched out in the afternoon sun, with his eyes half open and his broad tail moving slow and easy, knowing, the way dogs know, that something had settled, something had come back into alignment, something was going to be okay. She had walked in 5 days ago with a canvas bag and a folded piece of paper, and now the house that had told her to be invisible was asking her to stay. The last move of a desperate woman. 3 days after the sitting room, Maya moved into the estate, not into the family wing. There was a set of rooms above the east corridor, clean, well-proportioned, with tall windows that caught the morning, that had been empty for years. Cornelius had them prepared. She brought 2 bags and a box of books, and Priscilla helped her hang the curtains. It was, on its surface, a practical arrangement. Below the surface, they both knew it was something else beginning, something neither of them had named yet. They didn't need to name it. They had time. She spent those 3 days building a new order in the house. She hired 2 additional staff through the proper agency. People she interviewed herself, people who understood what the work actually required. She arranged Titan's veterinary visit. She reorganized the supply systems. She made a list of everything that had deteriorated in 2 years and prioritized it by urgency. She also had dinner with Cornelius twice in the small, informal dining room off the kitchen, with no caterers and no table settings. Just food Priscilla had made and 2 people talking until the candles burned low. The first dinner they talked about her mother and his business and Titan and the estate's history going back 4 generations. The second dinner they talked less and sat in the comfortable silence between 2 people who have found unexpectedly that they are at ease together in a way they can't fully explain. Both dinners, Titan lay at Maya's feet under the table. Cornelius pretended not to notice. She could see that he didn't mind at all. On the 4th day, the call came. Maya was in the east garden with her task list when Priscilla appeared at the service door, moving fast, face tight. "There are police at the front gate," she said. Maya looked up. "They're asking for you." The officers were professional, courteous, and deeply uncomfortable. 2 of them, standing on the front step with the careful posture of people who had been told to do something they personally found unpleasant. The older officer, a woman with close-cropped grey hair, was the one who spoke. "Are you Maya Osei?" "I am." "Ma'am, we've received a report of theft from this property. The complainant has identified jewelry, 3 pieces, total estimated value $40,000, as missing from the family's personal collection and has named you as the individual who had access." Maya heard it, let it land, didn't move. "The complainant," she said. "Is it Mrs. Hargrove?" The officer's expression didn't change. "I'm not able to—" "It's Mrs. Hargrove," Maya said. A pause. "We'd like you to come with us voluntarily while we investigate. We'd also like permission to search your rooms." "You have my permission," Maya said. "For both." They found the jewelry in the third drawer of her dresser, underneath 2 folded sweaters. 3 pieces, a sapphire brooch, a diamond bracelet, a strand of pearls. All genuine, all belonging, apparently, to Mrs. Hargrove's personal collection. The younger officer held the velvet pouch and looked at Maya with something conflicted in his face. "These were in your room," he said. "Yes," Maya said. "Someone put them there." "Ma'am, I know how that sounds." She kept her voice even. "But I did not take those pieces, and at least 2 people in this household have both the motive and the access to plant them where you found them. I'm asking you to wait before you make any decisions. There is security footage on this property. I would like someone to look at it." The older officer considered her for a long moment. "We're going to need to bring you in while we sort this out," she said. "It doesn't mean—" "I understand," Maya said. "I'll come." She was calm. Her hands were still. She thought of her mother and what her mother would say. The truth doesn't expire, Maya. It just waits. She went. Cornelius was in his study when Priscilla found him. Priscilla had been running. She told him in 14 words. Mrs. Hargrove called the police. They found jewelry in Maya's room. He was on the phone before she finished the sentence. He didn't call his lawyer first. He called Aldrich and the estate's head of security, a quiet, meticulous man who had managed the property's camera system for 8 years. "Every camera," Cornelius said. "East wing, staff corridor, her rooms, the last 72 hours, now." "Already pulling it," Aldrich said. "I saw them arrive." Cornelius stood at his desk window and watched the police car pull away from the front drive and felt, for the first time in a long time, a rage that was entirely clean. No self-doubt in it, no question, no. Just absolute clarity about what had been done and what needed to happen next. He picked up his coat. He went. She had given this house 4 days of honesty and hard work and genuine care, and someone had decided the worst thing that could happen was for her to stay. Titan always knew. The footage was 47 seconds long. Aldrich had it ready by the time Cornelius reached the police station. He sent it from his phone to the lead detective's email, while Cornelius sat across the desk in a room with fluorescent lighting and the smell of too much paperwork. The footage showed the East Corridor, 2:14 in the morning, 3 days prior. A figure in dark clothing, moving quickly, carrying something small and velvet, pausing at Maya's door, using a key, entering. Leaving 11 seconds later, empty-handed. The figure turned at the end of the corridor. The camera caught her face, Genevieve Hargrove, clearly, unmistakably. "There's a second file," Aldrich had written. "Same figure, same night, removing the jewelry from the main safe at 1:58 a.m., 16 minutes before entering the staff corridor." The detective watched the footage twice without speaking. "We'll need to release Miss Osei immediately," he said. "Yes," Cornelius said. "You will." Maya walked out of the station at 4 in the afternoon. The sky was the estate's deep blue. It seemed generous of it to follow her here. Cornelius was in the parking lot, coat on, hands in his pockets, not performing patience, actually patient, the real kind. "I'm sorry," he said. "This should never have happened." "It happened," she said. "It's done. Genevieve is being questioned now. There will be consequences. Good. Plain, without heat, not revenge. Just the appropriate order of things." He held the car door open. She got in. They drove back to Brackenwood Lane in the evening light, mostly in silence, and it was the good kind, full rather than empty. At the gate, he stopped the car. "You don't have to stay," he said, "after all of this." She looked at the limestone, the fountain catching the last light. "I have curtains up in my rooms," she said. "Priscilla made a soup this morning, and Titan is expecting me." He turned to look at her. "Is that enough?" he said quietly. "For now?" She met his eyes. "For now, it's everything." Priscilla met them at the service door with 2 bowls of soup and the expression of someone who had held herself together through a very long day and was now finally letting go of it. She looked Maya over, then handed her a bowl. "Sit down," she said. "Both of you. Eat." The soup was everything, warm and deep, bread still soft beside it. The kitchen lit the way a kitchen should be, with no performance and no ceremony, just people. They heard Titan before they saw him, his nails on the corridor floor. He pushed the door open with his broad head, crossed to Maya without looking at anyone else, and laid his chin on her knee. She put her hand on his head. He closed his eyes. Cornelius watched from across the table. The look on his face was the look of a man who has come back to something he thought was gone, and found it waiting, patient and warm, exactly as he left it. "He loves you," he said quietly. "He trusts me," she said. "It's better." He looked at her across the table. "Yes," he said, "it is." That was the beginning. The real kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself, that starts quietly on an ordinary evening, with soup and bread and a dog asleep across your feet. Genevieve settled the matter through her legal team and left Brackenwood Lane. She did not return. The estate came back to life the way old houses do when properly tended, slowly, then all at once, the rooms opening up, the light returning, the whole thing exhaling. Maya ran the household with the same method she had always used. Left to right, top to bottom, finish with the floor. She hired good people and paid them fairly. She had Titan seen by a vet who declared him in excellent health and commented on how unusually calm he was for his reputation. "He's calm with the right person," Maya said. The vet looked at the dog sleeping against her leg. "I can see that." Cornelius came home in the evenings and sat in the kitchen and talked to her until the candles burned low, and then they sat without talking, which was just as good. He told her one night the real reason he had left, not the bored version, the true one, about being slowly convinced that his presence caused more harm than good. She listened. Then, "The people who make you feel like a burden are usually the ones who need you to feel that way. So they stay in charge." He was quiet for a long time. "Your mother taught you that?" "She taught me a lot," Maya said. "I think she knew I'd need it." On a Sunday morning in October, he found her in the north courtyard. She was on the stone bench with Titan sprawled entirely across her lap, all of him, enormous and ridiculous, his head on her arm, asleep. The fountain, the warm sun, the blue sky. She was trying to read. Titan's weight made it a project. Cornelius crossed the courtyard and sat beside her. Titan opened one eye, saw him, closed it. "He's not concerned," Cornelius said. "He knows you're safe." She turned a page. "He's always known." The fountain made its sound between them. He put his hand over hers on the edge of the bench. She turned her hand over and held his. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The lesson was simple enough to say in one breath, "Be kind." Not because it will be rewarded, because it is what you are. The world has a way of placing you exactly where your character can be seen most clearly. What you do in that moment is who you are. Maya Ose had walked onto the estate with a canvas bag and a folded piece of paper. She had knelt beside a dog everyone feared. She had bandaged a hand without asking why. She had come back to work the morning after being lied to. She had stayed calm when framed for a crime she didn't commit. She hadn't done any of it to be seen. She had done it because she was her mother's daughter. And Titan had known it from the very first day. He always knew. The end. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded today that kindness is never wasted.